All right, welcome everyone. We're so glad you're joining us live today. So my name is Lauren Dennis with Design for Learning, and I'll be moderating the chat and helping you out over there. If you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in there and I'll call them out to Jay as we go along. So a few things to note before we get started. This workshop is being recorded and we will send you an email with a link to access the recording after the live session ends. And then in the chat, it's currently set to go to all panelists. If you want everyone to see your question and kind of chat with other people, just click the little caret arrow right there and select all panelists and all attendees, and everyone can see all your questions and comments. So with all that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jay Salerno.
Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen now. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Jay Salerno. I'm the Director of Educational Technology for a district right outside of Hartford, Connecticut, Newington. We have about 4,000 students. We've been a Google reference district since 2015. We've been a one-to-one district since 2015 also. So going into the pandemic, we were well prepared for everything. So tonight, it's my pleasure, or this afternoon, it's my pleasure for a little cursory overview of the Admin Council. As the Director of Educational Technology, I am not directly responsible for controlling the Admin Council, but I have all the admin privileges. And what I want to do and what we want to do with Design for Learning is just show you some of the important features that administrators should be aware of in terms of what you can get as information, what you can control, what you can't control, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My contact information is right here. As I say with all my presentations, that we are friends for life. So if you need to reach out and have a question, if I can't directly answer it for you, I will either find the answer or I will absolutely ask my Director of IT for the answer, and we can get that answer to you, because the Admin Council keeps expanding every single day. As everything with Google. And so it's important that we have only the best information to be able to control everything that we can control to make the best educational experience for our students. So I'm going to take you right now to the Admin Council. Let me just get rid of this and pull this down here. And some of the things I want to cover today are, I want to talk about the different features with all the different plans with Google Workspace for Education. Not only that, I would also like to talk about the dashboard. The information that you can get from the dashboard is so important, whether it's product updates or assigning administrator roles. OUs, when I say OUs, it's organizational units, and looking at a user profile. There's a lot of information that we get as administrators from our user profiles. For instance, when the student last logged in, or where has the student last logged in, or coordinating that with some other security features that we can actually find a device that's lost, etc. The user and browser settings. The device and settings, those are two separate things. User and browser settings are separate because any place that a student or a teacher logs into a Chromebook or into a Chrome profile becomes that user and browser setting. Where a device setting, when does the device restart? When does it update? And then talking about the apps, and there's an important comparison with the apps. It's the Google Workspace versus the Marketplace apps. And what I want to say that is Google Workspace apps are covered by data privacy laws, especially in like a state where I'm from, in Connecticut, which is so important as it is in many states. But Connecticut has one of the most stringent data privacy laws out there. And then Marketplace apps, which are not protected by data privacy, which we have to go out and get consent for. And then talking about apps and extensions, pushing and blocking them. Years ago, we would allow students to basically install whatever they wanted, and then we had to back that up, and now we push what we want, and we block everything else, and then we unblock what we want them to have. Then Kiosk Mode. Kiosk Mode is going to be for our state testing or our PSATs or SAT or AP exams. URL blocking. When I talk about URL blocking, I'll talk about that using it versus a third party. The investigation tool. Many times as administrators, we have to go into kind of an investigative mode, and I'll show you some of the advantages of that and what you can find out with the investigation mode. And I'll give you a good example of what we have used that before. And then the Meet quality tool, been a fantastic tool for us in terms of when Meet was kind of finding itself through the pandemic. Many times we had teachers not closing out meets because that feature was not that stringent in terms of closing out meets. The teacher was gone, the Meet closed. We had a lot of meets still open over the last few months that kids were using calendar invites to find. And I'll show you that you can find that and how the kids are using that as a communication tool outside of the school day. Managing groups. And then finally, I'll close out with the app. The app is just there for your phone, and I'll show the advantage of that. So let's get ready to roll with this. Let's first talk about the Google Workspace for Education, different features, and what's right for you. And I don't know where all of your districts are, obviously, and I don't know where you are in terms of what the pandemic brought to you. We were always a high-level user of Google, and these are the 4 education or EDU versions of Google Workspace for Education. We use the Google Workspace for Education Plus version. We pay $5 per student per year, so roughly $20,000. But for every 4 students, we get 1 free staff license. So we get 1,000 staff licenses. So therefore, we have to kind of monitor our staff licenses, even though we did not have 1,000 staff members in terms of teachers. We also have the paraeducators and the tutors that are using the higher versions of this. For instance, because Meet has these tools right here in terms of using the Q&A tools, the breakout rooms, etc. We always feel that is so important. So once we left the pandemic, we felt that it was very important for us to stay with what the teachers got comfortable with and not dial back. And I think that some of the other districts that are out there, maybe you might be in the middle of the road, but I think that there's lots of opportunity to always grow on this. And you'll see some of the better versions or better features, that you can utilize in terms of with the higher versions, such as unlimited originality reports for teachers. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but originality reports allow our teachers, especially at the secondary level, to check peer matches and internet matches across like a private repository of student work and also the internet for plagiarism. Our English or humanities teachers, our social study teachers, our science teachers, especially at the high school, utilize this all the time. And I think it's a very, very important feature. But I think more importantly, I think what we're getting the most out of the Google Workspace for Education is that all the features that we get with Google Meet, with the Google Workspace for Education Plus version. So now let's get into admin console and talk about what everything is. So I'm going to just minimize this a little bit here. And this basically is the home screen. And this is where, depending on the admin credentials that you give anyone, I'm going to go into that in a minute. So I have full credentials. This is my domain, full credentials to do whatever I need to do, see whatever I need to do on the admin console in Google. So you can see, we can look at our users, our billing will skip. But one of the first things is the product updates. And Lauren and I were just talking about this a second ago, is that Google is changing by the day. And we see that all these different features, and it's important for our staff to know that these features are coming. We're a rapid rollout district. We're also a beta district, so that we get the features a little quicker than everybody else. And as an administrator, I think it's important that you know, in order to inform your teachers, what's coming out also. And you can subscribe to these product updates and they come to your email, whether it's a individual version, like one update comes at a time, or a digest version by the day. I subscribe to the digest version so that you can tell your teachers or tell your staff that something's coming. Like Google Docs recently made a ton of changes. And it's important because you never want staff to say, oh my gosh, what happened now to Google Docs? And why isn't it doing this? Or where is this and that? So that's one of the features I love the most about right here. But again, you could subscribe to the product updates. Here are our domains. In Newington, we have basically 2 domains. our main primary domain is mpsct.org, but our secondary domain is where our students are. It's at my.mpsct.org. And the reason for that, we're able to, when I get into organizational units, I'm able to kind of give preferences and different things to different domains and different students. If I put everything under one umbrella, it wouldn't allow me as much flexibility. We do have test domains. This it.mpsct.org is basically our test domain. And then we have another test domain where we're really trying out other features. Also here, alerts, phishing. I don't think this is important as an administrator in terms of a district administrator or a principal, et cetera, but it's also important in terms of phishing. We're seeing phishing all the time. Obviously, there's a lot of folks out there that are trying to attack districts. So we're seeing different things that are coming through phishing. But what I also like down here is I can go to admin roles. And I think this is very, very important to try to minimize the contact or the ask that teachers have with IT all the time. I'm a super admin, but there also are other roles, and we can create custom roles for teachers based on, or district administrators based on what their role is. So in Newington, how we control the admin council, myself and my director of informational technology, I handle all technology integration, where he handles kind of the wires and pliers, as they call it. So we work together as the super admins in this council, but we have other roles. But another role that I think that is important is right here, is we can do password reset role only. Let me just find that right here. So I can do Google password reset only. And I can assign this to whoever I want within the district. But think about how important this is. A student forgets his or her password. When they forget their password, it's usually what we call a help desk ticket to reset the password. That's loss of instructional time. So we have assigned this role at the OU level to almost every single teacher. So now there's no classroom interruption other than a few minutes. And now a teacher can go in and reset a student's password real quick, right away, so that there's not that loss of instructional time of putting in a help desk ticket or doing whatever they have to do. So a great, great feature to consider. It doesn't have to be dialed down to every single individual teacher, but I think it's something to consider. If you have your point people at different buildings, whether it's coaches, tech integration specialists, library media specialists, whoever you think that could handle this role. But we have dialed it down because of, especially since due to COVID, when the kids were remote, we've dialed it down to every single teacher has this ability. It only has the ability to reset the passwords for the students. We're never going to have them have the ability to reset the passwords for other teachers. It's only going to be for the students, and usually just for their respective students in terms of their OUs, which we'll talk about in a second. I'm going to go back to home. And something else that's great on this screen here is the Google Workspace status dashboard. How many times as an administrator do you hear from your teachers, is Google down? Or they're putting a help desk ticket into IT. Google Drive isn't working. We have put this link on our website, on our educational technology website, so that teachers, before you put a help desk ticket in that Gmail is down, go check the Google Workspace status dashboard. And here you can see all the different portions or sectors of Google and whether or not they're up and running and what is going on. And they have different codes for everything. And it's all down here. Let me move this bar right here. I apologize. We're not working with a second screen. It's available. You have a service information there's a disruption or an outage. So you can see, or more importantly, the teachers can see what is going on in terms of any of the different portions of Google Workspace for Education. And now let me go back. Over on the right-hand side too, there's data export, nothing that you really have to worry about. The transfer tool for unmanaged users, another thing that you don't really have to worry about. Google Meet video setup, I'm going to show you an important tool with that in a second. And then Google Workspace Marketplace, we're going to also talk about that there. So there's many, many different features just from right here. But primarily what I concentrate on, product updates, the tools over here, and then most importantly, I think that as an administrator, I think we need to assign admin roles to a certain parameter to different folks within the district. Now that differs district to district in terms of IT folks and what your capacity or what their capacity is or what your folks' capacity is. But I think password reset is the best thing. Now let's move down to here to the directory and let's talk about your users and your groups and your organizational units. I'm going to go down to the organizational units first. So now with organizational units, this is how your district is broken up. And our district is broken up. Our kind of mothership is mpsct.org. We have devices here. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We have our staff. We have a stolen device OU. And the only reason we have a stolen device OU, we do use a separate product that we move devices that are missing into that stolen device OU. And what happens there is now when the device is turned on, we can pick up a geolocation on it. But most importantly are our students and how our students are broken down. And you can see our students are broken down into ES. And we have 4 elementary schools, Anna Reynolds, Elizabeth Green, John Patterson, and Ruth Chafee. But let's dial down that. We have it dialed down into grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, grade K, grade pre-K, and our littlest learners, which are even a younger year of our grade minus K3. And then we have all the other schools. And then the high school is broken down into grade 9, 10, 11, and 12. And then we have our middle school students broken down into our 2 middle schools and broken down by grade level. Now, depending on your IT department, you can break down your organizational units as far as you want. You could break it down by teacher. You could break it down even by whether it's a team, if you have a blue team or a red team. But we find that the most bang for the buck and the least maintenance is to just break it down by grade level. And now another thing to consider is how your IT department breaks down their devices. We do not put our devices into grade levels. We refresh devices now that COVID has finally changed everything. We refresh our devices. All of our kindergartners get their own device right when they get to school. Our students that enter 5th grade, which is middle school, get their own devices. A new device, refresh that device. Kindergartners get, let me back up for a second. Kindergartners get a touchscreen device. That goes through K through 4. In 5th grade, they get a new device. And then when they get to high school, they get another device. Now that's a lot of devices. And I know I'm probably speaking to and presenting to districts that are much bigger than 4,000 devices. And I couldn't imagine any other district bigger than 4,000. It's tough enough to maintain that many. But because we don't put our devices inside this one domain, these individual organizational units, we can manage our devices at this level, at the device level. Because a device that a elementary school kid that transitions to middle school in 5th grade next year could be the same device in terms of version and brand of device as a high school student. So that's always key also, is how do you refresh devices and what's your management program in terms of, okay, when does a kid not only get a new device, but what happens when it breaks? What grade level is he or she at? Where do we get that device? It's almost like you're just begging, borrowing from other different OUs. So we try to keep ours as simple as possible. And it's hard at times. I know bigger districts probably, with, districts and I've worked with, 25 or 30,000 students, you're not just using not only the same brand of device, you're using different brands of device also. So it's absolutely chaos. So we try to keep things as simple as possible in terms of keeping our OUs simplified. Not only with our OUs simplified this way, we can now also push out apps and extensions to different OUs in the profiles of those OUs. So let's go into a look at a profile of a student or a staff member. Let's start with my profile, what a profile looks like. So when I look at this profile here, you can see everything that's in my Drive, my Gmail, my photos, my Docs owned. Docs owned 1,000 plus is kind of that generic 1,000 plus. You can see that there's user information here. Oops. You can also see there's two-step verification on. Two-step verification is on for anyone in our admin council that has rights to make any changes. Next year, because of cybersecurity laws, we're going to turn that on for all staff members. And if you're not familiar with two-step verification, all staff members, when they log into a new Chromebook or log into a new device with a new Chrome profile, with that profile, they're going to have two-step verification enforced, meaning use their phone to authenticate that they're doing that. You can see the groups that somebody is a member of. You can see the roles and privileges, the apps they have, etc. And then licenses are right here also. And the licenses are important because if you do have, and this is one of the, I would say the downfalls with having Google Workspace for Education Plus, we have, you can see it's 38 licenses available. What I have to do almost daily with our turnover is, as any teachers or tutors enter our district, they automatically get a license for Google Workspace for Education Plus. And that gives them all the features like I talked about before, all those meet features, the originality reports, etc. But there's times when these licenses get dwindled down to 0 because if you remember, you get 4 licenses for every one student. So now we have 1,000 licenses. We have turnover all the time. And unfortunately, with our turnover, what happens is these folks, even though they get suspended out of the Google Workspace for Education, put into the suspended teacher, they don't get removed from this license. So it's almost like a daily thing for me to go in and make sure that the Google Workspace for Education Plus is always on the positive side here. Now let's move over here. What we can do for a user, whether it's a student or a staff member, we can reset their password. We kind of have that standard password for all of our students and our staff member. When we say we've reset your password and we notify staff or notify a student, they kind of know what that standard password is. We can update the user with any of their settings. We can even update their profile photo. Many times we've seen this where students are putting an inappropriate profile picture up here. You can control that in profile settings also, where we wouldn't want the students to upload another photo. You can control that, or you can even put a standard district photo for every single student. We've tried to make it authentic for every single student. So as long as they're not being inappropriate, we're trying to allow them that kind of ownership, the ownership of their own profile, the ability to change that profile picture. We can do alternate emails. Many times this comes in handy when you have teachers that get married or have a name change. We can add teachers to groups or staff members to groups right from here. We can email them from right here. But most importantly, this is the one that comes into play the most. is restoring data. We can restore data up to 25 days on any users. So if I clicked restore, I can restore any of the data up to the last 25 days. How many times do you have a student that says, nope, I lost it and it's not in my trash? Well, you have an admin go in and restore the data. You can have a teacher have the ability to restore the data back to what I said when we manage admin roles. But up to 25 days, it can restore. And it can restore anywhere in Drive or Gmail. Gmail gets a little crazy. If you ever tried to restore Gmail, we all know as administrators how many Gmails that we get. And all of a sudden, you restore that for the last 25 days, and it's just a blurry mess inside your Gmail. So let me get out of there right now. And then, Lauren, I'm assuming that there's no questions. You haven't stopped me, so I'll just keep going. So now let's get into the settings. And within devices, there's different settings. Now there's an overview, and I can look at the overview of all the different settings here. It just time me out as a security measure because I haven't logged back in. And you can see here, we're going to control devices. We can control mobile devices. We don't have any mobile devices that we control. The endpoints, the Chrome devices, the browsers, the Jamboards, and then the Google Meet hardware. Our biggest thing right here is we're going to control our Chrome devices and our managed browsers. We do have some Jamboards in district that we control here, but most of the time we're spending all of our time controlling our devices, which are our Chromebooks, and controlling our browsers. So the difference is here. If I go here to Chrome and I control our devices, you can see all of our devices here. Now I can look at a device, and if I click on this first device, you can see it's provisioned. So it's a device inside our domain. It says asset ID, meaning it's an asset tag, and it has its organizational unit, so it's an active device right now. I can see that the enrollment time right here, in terms of when it back enrolled, and I also can see the last policy sync. So this device today, on May 12th, the policy sync in terms of our policy with Chrome synced again at 6/26. But if I click on the serial number, I can also see different things here. I can see the Chrome OS version. Now Chrome is moving by the day. It's up to 100. We always stay 1 to 2 versions back in Chrome OS. We always try to stay with a Chrome version that state testing will support, but we always try to stay a version or 2 back because of bugs, so that we know it's a verified version. We stay back, and then we'll move. When we hit 101, it's a safe version, we'll move this to 99. Or we may skip a version in terms of going from maybe 98 to 100. We'll do that, make that decision. But down here, we can also see the most recent activity, the recent users. And you can see the memory usage, the IP addresses, anything like that. Now, my biggest as an administrator is here, the most recent users. Let's say this student right here says they're missing their device. As an admin, I can go in and I can see the recent users. So if a student mistakenly has grabbed that device and logged into this device, I can see that student, who it is. And many times we've had investigations and found that the most recent user actually had that device, whether it was a mistake or whatever. Over here on the left-hand side, I can move this device to somewhere. If it's claimed as lost and stolen, I can push it to that. This is very brand new. Remote desktop. Your IT department or whoever has the super admin privileges can now take over a device and go into remote desktop right from here. We can reset a device. Many times this is great, especially during remote learning, where a student is struggling with something that's going on with their device. We'll reset the device remotely. We can disable a device, and deep provisioning is taking it out of our OU and basically making it, for no better terms, a brick, making it no use to anyone. So we can do that. So now let's go down even further. And I can go to settings, and I can go to users and browsers. This is my favorite space within the Google Admin Console. Now you can see that the OUs come back up. Within the OUs that come back up, I can start to control the students. And what happens is we can control things as inherited, meaning elementary school, high school, and middle school can inherit different settings from the student's OU. Or we can break it down even further. We can say, you know what? Elementary school is going to have different settings. And now the elementary schools are going to inherit ES. Not students, they're going to inherit ES. Because basically this is the parent, or let's call this the grandparent, then the parent, and then to the grandchildren. Or I can even break it down even further, for lack of better terms, into great-grandchildren. I can break down this so that grade 1 has certain settings also. Some of the settings that we think about in terms of this, you have custom wallpaper, the avatar that I talked about before also. But some of the stuff too, if I go in here, and I'm going to just type in URL blocking. We can block, and you can see this is inherited from students. We can block certain URLs right in Chrome here. Now we use a separate product to block that, and I'm going to show you that in a few minutes, but not to promote the product, just to understand why we don't use this. We use this for a number of years where we're blocking right away certain websites, but we're not able to classify it. What we do here is we block any Chrome URLs that we need to block for all students, because many times some of the stuff that they're getting into or ways they're bypassing firewalls are through here. We're also, one of the biggest things is we're not allowing them to ever clear their browser data. We have ability to, through a separate product, to be able to see their browser data, but we don't want them to have the ability at all to clear their browser data, because many times we'll have calls into my office is a parent wants to see the browser data. And early on, we were allowing kids to clear their browser data, and that was just not acceptable because now parents couldn't see the browser data. It's so important for parents and guardians and families to take that responsibility, to have that digital citizenship conversation or that sit down or that nightly kind of conversation in terms of where the students are going on the internet. Many times, you know, it's easy for families as administrators, we know, is for kind of put that on the schools. You have given our child a device. Now it's your responsibility to monitor it 24/7. We do not monitor 24/7. We do have our filters on through our third party on the weekends, but we still want to encourage through digital citizenship workshops that the parents, the families, etc., need to take a role in promoting digital citizenship with their kids. And obviously, as they grow older, those middle years are the toughest years for digital citizenship and taking care of the devices. But we're trying to do our best. And I think every district is going through the same thing. It's just the nature of the beast as with middle school children. I have one of my own, not in terms of, not only in terms of, you know, just knowing where to go or social media, but also taking care of the device in general. So URL blocking is critical there in terms of what we can do. There's many other things that we can do with just setting the browser. Now, these are user and browser settings. So as I resort back to my initial statement, is this is based on user and browser settings. So if this student logs into or teacher, because we can also control the OU for staff right here. If they log into another device, into Chrome, when I say log into Chrome, it's the mothership way up here. If they log into Chrome up there, this follows them. All of these settings follow them there. So now let's move into device settings. With device settings, now we're controlling our Chromebooks, but not all of our Chromebooks. We're only controlling our Chromebooks that are managed by our district. So they have to be in an OU that is managed. So we can make an OU over here, an organizational unit, that is not managed, and we can throw it there. And we can make sure that all of our managed devices are right here, and all of our settings are right in here. So we disable guest mode, for instance, because we don't want, if this device walks in terms of, gets in the hands of somebody else, we want them to have an account with Newington Public Schools, whether it's a staff member or a student, to be able to log in. Another thing that is possible is this family link accounts. One of the new features within probably, I would say, the last 18 months is you can have a family link account. So a family member can link in and then add like a supervision account. We haven't really experimented with it enough, but we want to make sure that it's off right now until we really investigate it all. Now, autocomplete domain, another great thing for the young users, especially our littles. So now they only have to type their username once, and that has the rest of the fill-in. And you can see I can do different things here. On the device also from here, I can turn off, I can make a default keyboard if I want, but it's by device in terms of the entire OU. So any settings that you do make, it's going to change for the entire OU. Now, one of the things also we've seen in recently is we've seen especially our kindergartners, they're experimenting with sign-in screen accessibility. And the hardest thing is that because it's OU bound, and we have one big OU, and I resort back to, again, because we have one OU, because we have so many devices that are getting turned over and the similar devices, accessibility is huge for, obviously the equity piece for all of our students, whether it's select to speak, high contrast, screen magnifier. We're allowing our user to decide. And so many times we're allowing these kindergartners who have that, that experimental kind of, they want to go into the sandbox and play with all the toys. And we're seeing students that are changing all these accessibility features where the backspace key works as the delete key all of a sudden. I guess it's catch-22. We're trying to teach that proper use, but we're also trying to teach them how to learn to control the device. I think once some of them get past the I want to experiment, but we're not having problems where the teacher's like in panic mode because all of a sudden the screen's magnified and she can't figure out, or he or she can't figure out how to change the accessibility. So we allow accessibility for all our students. I think in our educational technology classes, we have educational technology classes from PK through 8th grade. We're trying to promote the proper usage and allow these students, yes, you can change it, but here's how you change it back. Okay, so let's move on now to apps and extensions. With apps and extensions, and I mentioned it before, years ago, in 2015, when I took on this role, this is my 24th year in the district. And before that, I was just a technology teacher. And then I became an admin, and we wanted these kids, here come all these extensions in 2015 when we went to one-to-one. Install what you want, install what you want. And then we'll block what you have and that are inappropriate. So what we do now, we learned from our mistake. We allow extensions that we feel are appropriate. We block everything else. Now you'll see some things that are blocked because we were just trying to play kind of catch up too many times, excuse me. Like when Google Meet was going through all the transition with COVID and all these extensions were coming, we had to block those because they were causing havoc with the regular Google Meet. So we had to do that. But anything that we think that's important, we will allow install, like Desmo Graphing Calculator or ColorZilla, which will allow the students in our web design classes to take an eyedropper tool and find the exact color. But more importantly, we'll push extensions or automatically install extensions that we need to be there. We are a district that is a Screencastify district. We are fully invested in it. So we push Screencastify. We have to push our GoGuardian extensions. We push Read and Write to our students also. So we can push things that we want to push. When I say push, it means it pushes it to their browser, to their user browser, not to their device. So when we push things, it comes up here in the puzzle piece. And you can see, if I go to manage extensions, I can remove extensions that I've installed. Now, teachers can install whatever they want. But what happens is you can see there's other extensions that I can't remove, like Screencastify. So the students are not able to remove them. Like Grammarly a few weeks ago was causing havoc on devices in terms of Google Docs. Everything was typing in white. And through many blogs, everybody figured out it was Grammarly. So we took Grammarly down. Now Grammarly has fixed that. The problem is many extensions, with all the updates to Chrome, they have to update also. If they lag behind, then also the extensions will wreak a little havoc on them. So that's the difference here. Now, the other thing here is Kiosk Mode. Now, Kiosk Mode, let me go to Students and Devices. With Kiosk Mode, when a device is in Kiosk Mode, what happens is now we can push certain apps into a kiosk, which is in the lower left-hand side of the Chromebook when they launch it. They're not going to log in the middle of the device. They're going to log into a kiosk. And when I say a kiosk, just like you're at almost like the shopping mall, you're going into a kiosk and you can't go anywhere else. So now, for instance, we've just been going through AP testing and College Board, etc. Now we can launch these basic kiosks. And now the student can use their device and they can't surf anywhere else. Now, what we have been seeing, unfortunately, is many of these kiosks will have somewhere in it, maybe a support link or a help page inside the kiosk will take them to an unmanaged browser. So we use GoGuardian to manage our browsers in terms of that. So now all of a sudden the students are able to go into these sites that they shouldn't be based on going through a kiosk. So we're very careful which kiosks we launch and the time frame when we launch them in terms of that. All right. I know we have about 15 more minutes and we'll just keep going unless there's any other questions. Now we have some Jamboards in district and we can manage the Jamboards also. We have Jamboards at our educational technology classrooms at the middle school, and we can manage them and we can make sure that whether we can turn them on. You can see the Jamboard at Wallace is on. I think the Jamboard at Kellogg, there's a class going on. There's no meeting going on, but we can see that. So you can also manage all of your devices there. And you can see before I talked about mobile and endpoints, all of that is right there also. So if we go down to our apps, as I said before, Google Workspace has their own apps. And you can see what the apps are there. Calendar, Classroom, Drive and Docs, Gmail. All of these apps are the ones that are covered by kind of like the that mothership overarching data privacy from Google. When you go into additional services, depending on what state you are in, some of these additional services are not managed are not covered under data privacy, but they're not obviously under Google's umbrella. But if I go back to Google Workspace and you look at it, here are all the different settings that I can set. You can see I can turn on different settings for classroom, calendar. Classroom, one of the biggest settings I would see is if I can see here with my classes, we do not, our district is what happens is we allow teachers to create their own Google Classrooms. We not push it through our SIS or ClassLink or Clever. We have a group and the teachers can create their own Google Classrooms. You can see I have some pending members here. No, I have no pending members, but all my members here are teachers that have created their own classrooms. And you can see, and I can manage this. So once in a while, we'll get a leak through that a student has created it because we allow that, or a teacher has allowed a student to create allow a student to be a co-teacher because maybe it's a group after school, like we have a gaming club, and they want the students to take ownership in terms of allowing students into that classroom or pushing whatever notices out. So that can occur, and sometimes we have to approve that. But you can manage all of the core stuff there. We have additional services, but then we also have the Google Workspace Marketplace apps. With the Google Workspace Marketplace apps, now these apps are basically gone with Google. These are basically web-based apps, and it's basically a shortcut to the apps. And you can see I can turn it on and off for some and everyone. And when I say that, it's basically turning it on for certain organizational units. So I can see here, Sora, a reading app, I can turn it and you can see it's on for one organizational unit. That's our elementary school. But you can also see what permissions that this app is grabbing. When you sign into any account using your Google sign-in, you can now see, and that's called an API. You can see what data that Sora or any of these other apps is looking at, which is so important depending on your data privacy laws, obviously by your state, governed by your state, or even your district. So we want to make sure that these apps are not taking things that they shouldn't be taking. So let's move on now to security. And in my role, many times with the security, I'm seeing this tool here, the investigation tool. How many times as an administrator do we have, whether it's a bullying incident, an inappropriate incident, a communication incident, through the investigation tool, depending on privileges, an administrator can see different things. So for instance, and we had a situation actually a few weeks back where I had to go in here and start investigating. I can start looking at different measures. For instance, I can look at Gmail messages and I can add a condition that it's sent. And I'll just add myself. And I can search this, and it's going to take a minute. So we can see all of the apps through the investigation tool and all of the data that's being shared. And we had a lot of stuff right here. So I can see right here, let me just get out of that form submissions. I can see that I was trying to get some teachers, they're getting Google certified educator certification today. I can see the actual message. Not that we're ever have to use it for continuous investigation, but that if there is an instance, I think it's important to know as an administrator, you can actually see the messages being sent. Obviously, all FOIable. So this is where we're going to get all of that information there through the investigation tool. Another great tool, let me go back to the home screen, and I mentioned it before also, is Google Meet. If I go here, and you can do a search up here through it, the Google Meet settings have what's called the Meet Quality tool. And with the Meet Quality tool, we can find out all of the different meets that are going on during the day. And we can also find out when students are originating meets that weren't closed out and which were probably during the pandemic with a calendar invite. We can see it. I spent many hours every single day in trying to close out those meets as best I could. So I don't see any too many meets right now with students, because I would see a my.mpsct.org, but I can see the meets that are going on. And for instance, right here, one of my library media specialists, we can see who was in the meet, how long, when they turn their mics on and off, all the different information that we needed through the Meet Quality tool. The last thing I want to touch upon are groups. And groups are so important because managing all these groups and making sure that everybody's in the right groups, we can do it as a super admin from groups.google.com, but we also can do it right here. You can see all the different groups are here. So I can see we have different alerts. If we have to do an alert security, we can do all administrators. We can do all grade 1 throughout the district. We've set up all these groups so that all the email goes there and directly to them. Now, with the groups, if I have a new principal, let's say, I can go over here. I can add members. I can bulk upload members through a CSV file. I can change access settings so I can make everybody else owners if I wanted to. All different things I can do there. So that's through groups, but you also can do the same thing through groups.google.com. And as a super admin, I just usually do it here. And I go all groups, and you can see the settings are basically the same. And those are all those groups that I had before right here. Now, one of the last things I want to touch upon before I want to just introduce you to the app. When I talked about URL blocking, that URL blocking was very generic. It was just like one big block. But we use a product called GoGuardian, not promoting it in any way. But when I can block, I can't categorize. And I think this will probably end up being a feature in the admin console through Google. So now my policy list in terms of blocking, I'm able to allow, block adult, block chatting, block Discord, etc. And I can just keep going. And what happens with a product like this, whether you're using GoGuardian or Securely or any of those other third parties, now that all that artificial intelligence, machine learning, whatever it is now picking up more sites, because these kids are constantly looking for ways to bypass the filter. When you have this URL blocking here, you're blocking direct. There's no categories, etc. Now, finally, before I talk about the app, I remember one more thing, are reports. And with reports, you can see as an admin all the different things that are going on within your district. Like look at our Google Classroom numbers. You can see our Google Classroom numbers right up here, right around, probably hovering around 950 off and on. And you can see our dip is usually right there around January, because that's our high school going into high school and middle school going into the next quarter or trimester, and this is usually our middle school. Excuse me. I think it's, let me back that up. That's our high school going into our next semester. This is our middle school going into our next trimester in terms of that dip real quick in terms of when we get it set up. But you can see many, many different things here. You can see what's going on. Not that this is definitely important, but you can see spikes in drive in terms of what's going on. You can see all different, you can see user activity. You can dial that down and do different searches. So there's a lot of different things that you can do as an administrator in the admin console. I think just going through all these different things that I've shared with you today, I think you're going to customize it to your best need. I use it primarily, obviously, to set up different things with my director of IT, but your role might be different. It might be just to see data. It might have to be just to maybe minimally just look at an investigation report if you have access to, but there's so much out there. In terms of all the different settings, if you have any different questions for me, please reach out. My email address was in the original slide. It's jaysallerno07@gmail.com. But I deeply appreciate your time. We appreciate you guys taking the time, not only if it's live or if it's later on, but to make our situations better for our students. I know we're going through some difficult times right now, but the light's at the end of the tunnel. Another school year is ending up right now, and a new beginning will start next year. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now. Lauren, if you have anything to add, by all means do.
Yeah, no, everyone's saying thank you. This was interesting and helpful. We'll give it a couple minutes and see if any questions pop in. But just a reminder that this whole webinar workshop was recorded, and we will send you an email with a link to access the recording and Jay's slide deck as well. I know we had some great links in there. So we'll give it a couple more minutes and just see if any questions pop in. But yeah, just a huge thank you to Jay for your time and all of your expertise and sharing your knowledge. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Oh, there's one in the Q&A. Oh yeah, it was just a question about the recording. Yes, we will be sending you an email with a link to access the recording.
Thank you, James. Any questions, please lean out.
Okay, we'll give it another minute, but you did so good. No one has any questions. Oh, where's your school?
Robin, I'm right outside Hartford, Connecticut, Newington Public Schools, 4,000 students. We've been one-to-one since 2015. So it's been a great ride.
Jay, we do have a question from Victor. Is there any way we could get a list of extinction that you allow in your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. Lauren, how do you want me to handle that? Do you want me to, Lauren, you want me to send it to you, or do we want me to, they want to directly email me, or no, I'll just put it in the presentation. That's best.
Okay. Yeah, or you can send it to me too, and I can add it in the follow-up email with a link to.
Yeah, why don't we'll do both.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, thank you, Victor. We'll make sure you get that. Extensions, Robin, do you have questions about extensions?
Yeah, I think that's what Victor was asking.
Extensions, got it. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, we'll give it another minute and then we'll pop off because I know it's getting late for everybody.
You West Coast folks, it's
just
we're getting real late here.
I know, I meant for you. Thank you, Robin. I appreciate that. I know I was like, extinctions. All right, well, I think that's it, Jay. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us live. And again, we will send you an email with a link to access the recording, the slide deck, and a list of extensions that Jay uses in his district. So thank you, Jay, and thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.